Has been an outcry on social media about Gautrain delays this week, which have been moving at a snail's pace. Passengers of the high-speed train have reportedly had to wait for up to half an hour. Now, this is not the first time passengers have had to experience this. Gautrain CEO Tsebo Khobe joins us for more on this issue. Tsebo, appreciate your time. Thanks so much for coming onto the show.
Thank you for having me, Hugo.
Now, the Gautrain is the epitome, in most instances, of what a proper service is like when it comes to transport and rail. So you can imagine the frustration of individuals when it's almost, 2 or 3 minutes late is 2 minutes too late.
I agree. I think it shouldn't be. In a province like ours that seeks to be a very progressive province, but also in a space where we're looking to create the best of the best in terms of transport, we shouldn't be having this situation. The truth is, sometimes systems fail, but the biggest issue that we had the other day was the manner in which we communicated. And we struggled on the day to be able to actually inform commuters in time of how big the problem was, because we had a really, really big problem. So let me explain what had happened on Friday. So in the morning, we had a catenary wire break. So a catenary wire is the wire that brings the power onto the system. So on one of the lines between Samrand and Centurion. Now, what that does is it creates a big problem, because on a high-speed system like ours, you cannot go onto the line and repair it at that point in time. We normally do it at engineering hours, which is after the system closes in the evening. Now, post that, what became worse was that in the later part of the day, we had a power trip on the other side, because the system, what it is designed to actually be able to protect itself. The minute there's a breakage in any of the, what do they call it, of the cabling, the circuits route themselves in such a way that they try and protect the power so that there's no surges that could actually blow up the substations. And what it did is it then exacerbated the problem in the afternoon. And the big challenge was we were running with a single line. And when you're running with a single line, so one of the biggest issues that it's part a design flaw of when we were designing the system in 2005 is that we have a very long block. A block is an area where we can keep a train without it actually colliding with another train. We've got very long blocks between Centurion and Midrand, and also Centurion and Pretoria. So the minute you're running a single line in a space like that, you actually literally are running the one train first out of that space and then inserting the next one after that. And sometimes that doesn't work. But that is inexcusable, because at that point in time, you actually communicate with the commuters so that the commuters can make their own decisions. And that is the biggest mistake. And for that, I personally apologize that we were not at our best in terms of communicating.
Now, Tsebo, you talk about communication, and we are going to speak a little bit about that. But Centurion and Midrand had challenges in December. I'm on you on the WhatsApps or yes, on the texts, and I get texts quite frequently. Yeah. Actually, I don't use Gautrain as often as I get the texts, yeah, but I think every few days for the last maybe 4 or 5 weeks, I've been getting messages talking about various delays that have been occurring on one line or the other on the Gautrain service, on the Gautrain delivery. So where are the challenges?
So the biggest challenge that we have is that at this point in time, we're in the middle of our renewals. So so the system is about 15 years old now. And in actual fact, some parts of it, because it was probably installed probably 2009, 2010, somewhere there. What that does is that then you're in the middle of the renewals. And in the middle of the renewals, what happens is that you do have a lot of these issues that crop up. We were a bit slow about, what do they call it, about getting on the track and fixing some of the old items that needed to be replaced, as it's normal. And that in itself has sort of, over the last 4 months, it has, you're right, it has been a very, very difficult 4 months. And we are pushing quite hard. What happened on Friday was actually a physical break in the line that was not supposed to happen. The original thought was that it was actually sabotage, but with us looking at it, it doesn't look like there was any tampering. But it is an important part of what they call it, of any system, that when it gets to about the 15th and the 16th year, then you do a lot of work on it. We're doing a lot of work that we were going to do in the new concession, which is like the current contract ends on the 28th of March next year in 2026. But we've moved a lot of that work into this contract so that we can actually clean it up, so that by the time we get there, there's very few issues that we have to deal with. We do recognize that it is a big challenge, especially in a system that has performed at its best for a very long time. But it is work that has to be done.
So when we talk about delays, what's an acceptable delay? What is your standard?
3 minutes a train is late, and I charge penalties.
Who do you charge the penalties to?
To the operator and the concessionaire.
Okay, so let's talk about communication, because that's clearly been an issue, right? Now, in the last 4 months, as you've said, there've been various challenges. What is the level of communication that you've been putting out to commuters? Is it about the train's going to be delayed today, or the train will be delayed in an hour, or over the next few months we are undergoing various changes and you are to expect any measure of delays? So, as you said, the commuter then has the opportunity to make a choice.
So let's talk about crisis communication first. So there's the bit when there's a delay immediately. And immediately, so we put out the text and saying we're having a challenge on the system. And at that point in time, we might not even really know exactly what the technical problem is. And you'll just get a message that says we're having a technical challenge. Then the next layer of it is now us being able to articulate what the problem really is. And then from then onwards, then it's us making sure that we consistently through the day make sure that our commuters are kept abreast with any issues that we couldn't resolve at any one point in time. So the issue with what they call it with Friday was and critical to it was that it was a problem we couldn't sort out during the day. And therefore we needed to communicate clearly that parts of the system that are damaged can only be repaired in the evening, and we're going to carry this delay throughout the day. But that we didn't do. We kept on just pushing out exactly the same message.
Why didn't you communicate the correct message or the appropriate message?
So let's roll back. So remember, I have a concessionaire, I have I have an operator, and I have I have a maintainer. At the level of of operations and the concessionaire have to communicate. And by the time we had realized as system owners that the communication was not going correctly. It was probably into the second hour of the challenge going on social media. And at that point in time, we actually made sure that they corrected that, because it is inexcusable. And even them, when I was having the conversation with them, and we had harsh words to exchange with each other on the Friday, just purely because I couldn't understand why could you not tell the people the real story. You are not going to be able to get on the track. So therefore, don't act like, no, it is a minor delay.
So how do you ensure this doesn't happen again? And you've talked about penalties. What sort of happens beyond that exchange of harsh words that you had on Friday?
So the contract takes its course, and when the contract takes its course, in essence, a day like Friday, it will bite quite heavily into the tens of millions of rands that will be actually be the penalties that are levied for a day like we had on Friday. But we have consistently applied the contract, and in essence, it is now at a point where the concessionaire himself actually knows that they need to actually do something about the challenge that sits there. And it's all about us making sure that that contract functions properly. And we've done very well in getting it to this point, and we're not going to fall flat in the last run.
So Sepa, there've been multiple messages on social media, and I'm sure you're familiar with many of those messages, and certainly the tone of some of them. Now, there's a penalty that you've implemented, obviously, or that you will implement as a result of these failures to communicate and largely the failures to operate. So what happens to the individuals who are trying to catch a flight, for argument's sake, and miss that flight because of those delays on Friday?
So a lot of the issues that lie with that, and that's where the communication is important, because then a person is able, I mean, all systems do have failures. And sometimes something goes wrong. And in essence, in order they call it, so let's talk about people who have cards that are, what do they call it? They had bought them for a month. And so a lot of that, we actually allow them to use their cards a little bit longer into the coming month. So that in itself is a form of compensation. In that sense. A lot of people do bring claims to, what do they call it, towards the concessionaire, and the concessionaire manages that through their claim system if there is any proven loss of damage because of us in any form. So and that we have the numbers and everything else that runs with that. And it's
so categorically speaking, Tsepo, sorry to come in there.
Yeah.
If an individual was catching a flight and was unable to catch the flight, one, because of the miscommunication. I mean, the information that you said that was put out was incorrect information, because if the right information had been put out, then a person would have made a decision and said, okay, you know what, let me use an alternative means of transport. But because that information didn't come through correctly and an individual was unable to catch his flight, would such an individual, if they put in a claim, get restitution for their inability to travel or for the missed flight?
We have the rules that are there, and when, what do they call it, when something actually is a pertinent claim and it's a real claim, that, what do they call it, it would need to be settled.
Okay, so let's talk about the various individuals that obviously are putting out various messages on social media. You must have a word for your consumers who are extremely frustrated at the moment. Those that are watching the show that will be taking Gautrain to go to work tomorrow or go to the airport. What is the message you have for them?
The message is what happened on Friday is something that we will not repeat. And in essence, what we've gone through the whole weekend without an incident, and we're trying to get back to the point where we do not have any big challenges on the system, and therefore we're working hard to make it better. Gauteng people and South Africans deserve better, and it is up to us to make sure that they get that.
Okay, so let's move on. You've talked about infrastructure and upgrades that need to take place. Just walk us through what upgrades can we expect. And I think there has been talk of a phase 2 expansion of the Gautrain. How are those plans looking at the moment?
So let's start with the upgrades. So you might have seen, if you walk through Sandton Station, the actual fare gates have changed. They're much smaller, they are much more modernized. So that's part of the work that we're doing. So we're changing parts of the, what do they call it, of the fare system in itself. So one of the things that we had given to South Africa, and which was one of the first 3 around the globe to be able to have that, is you now no more need to buy a Gautrain card for you to travel. You can, anybody who has a prepaid debit card or a credit card can actually just walk in and tap their own card on the system. So those are some of the upgrades that we brought on. We've also brought on bring your own device. If you see me on the system, you'll see me do this on the gate. So you can actually use your own payment device to pay on the system. One of the big issues that has troubled us over the last 4 months is actually the signaling system. The signaling system that we have is the City Flow 250, which is with automatic train protection on it. It is an old system. It is partially a modernized system because of how we installed it, but we actually need to move ourselves into more open system like the ERTMS train control type systems, which are with parts that are readily available off the market that are not proprietary to any particular company. So that's part of our big issue. But also the big issue with that is us being able to remove cables off the long sections. So the areas where people could actually break cables and all of that. So that's part of that. We also need to bolster the power. And the Friday showed us properly that the power in itself is our next big scare. And then the train itself needs to be renewed. It's a 15-year-old train that's been on the market for a while, and we need to do something with that.
So that's where we're going to leave the conversation. Appreciate you for coming onto the show. Tsepo Hobe, the Chief Executive Officer of the Gautrain Management Agency, walking us through that conversation. As you'd be well aware, there have been delays and much outcry, but he has also given us assurance that come tomorrow morning when you take the train, it will be on time.